Disclaimer: the main segment for this week's episode focuses on politically charged topics. We here at Digital Media have made the nature of the questions asked during this segment as nonpartisan as possible. The opinions expressed by the interviewees are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the Salem High News. Thank you for your understanding, and we now continue to your regularly scheduled broadcast. Good morning, Salem High. I'm Ethan, and today is Friday, February 12th, 2021. And happy Chinese New Year, everyone. It is officially the Year of the Ox. This week's quote of the week is, "We generate fears while we sit. We overcome them by action." This week on the Salem High News, we have an interview with some of our history teachers about some recent events that have been going on in the national news. But before we get too political, we have a few announcements. If you want to showcase your talents, whether it would be singing, playing an instrument, dancing, reciting poetry, or any kind of art form, then sign up for our annual Trium Showcase. Everyone is welcome to perform. Well, almost everyone. If you're interested, send in an audition video to Miss Napier-Kowski by Monday, March 15th. The final videos are due on the 24th. There are spots for a paid internship available if you're interested. That's at the North Shore Medical Center, like right down the street. This internship will meet on Zoom on Tuesdays and Fridays from 1 to 3:30 p.m., starting in early March. Contact Ms. Fargo if you're interested in applying. The Patriots Hall of Fame Black History Month Writing Contest is now open for participation, with this year's topic focusing on the impact that local organizations and initiatives have had on the fight against systematic racism. Check your email or our weekly updates for more details. Finally, Q2 report cards were posted on Aspen today. Contact the College and Career Center if you would like a hard copy sent home. Over the past few months, there has been a lot of major events covered on the national news, almost all of which has spread a lot of political tension. The storming of the Capitol. For our main segment today, we have some of our history teachers here to discuss these events and more, so without further ado, let's head right into it. How's it going, Salem High? Right now, I'm here with just 3 of our history teachers. We have Mr. Muntu, Mr. Bob, and Mr. Massey. Glad to have you with us.
Morning. Morning, Ethan.
Okay. So, yeah, it's no secret that what happened on January 6th at the Capitol has been in quite a lot of people's minds. I mean, with the impeachment trial going on now, and okay, and now as sort of a review on what happened, just what happened at the Capitol during that day. Was it like a revolution, an insurrection, a riot, maybe all 3?
I mean, I can take the lead on this one. I really believe a lot of people, it's based on their perspective of it, right? We have the people that were storming the Capitol, believe that was and you heard those terms, especially as it was going live across the news. They were calling this a revolution, and they were all, in a tizzy, when the news portrayed it much different, as well as I think every American really kind of passed judgment for themselves. So regardless if it was what you call it, I think what we saw was a wake-up call for all Americans to say we need to do better as a country.
Yeah.
I would agree with Mr. Bubb in that, the word that you want to use to describe what happened on January 6th is really, in many cases, it's a matter of perspective. And there are those who have the perspective that it was a revolution. And then there are those who have the perspective that it is an insurrection. So, your answer is going to totally depend upon who you ask. From my standpoint, it probably, falls closer to the side of that insurrection than the revolution.
From my point of view, I would not hesitate to call this an insurrection. Dictionaries define insurrection as a violent action taken by a group of people against the rulers of a country to try to remove them from office. I sort of maybe sometimes look at it as like the anti-John Brown. John Brown wanted to overthrow the government for for good reasons, right? For abolition of slavery. It wasn't okay how he wanted to do this. And these people wanted to overthrow democracy, and it wasn't okay how they did this. That's how I see it.
It's a great point, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, and this wasn't really a surprise to a lot of people, but because of that, among others, Trump was impeached for incitement of insurrection. I'm not sure if we'll know this for sure yet, but will he be convicted?
Ethan, that's a fantastic question. I'm sure that many of us are following what's going on in the impeachment hearings that started yesterday and today, and will continue on for quite some time. If I were placing a wager, I'm not sure I would wager on that he will be convicted, but I think it's actually going to be closer than most people would predict. So I think there's actually a real chance that he can be convicted, but I wouldn't bet on it.
But then again, that chance is real slim because, as we know, that for conviction it requires a 2/3 majority vote of the Senate. So
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
The thing is, we've even seen, and I was talking about this actually with one of my classes today, that we've actually seen a shift in the percentages of people that right off the bat, when it first happened, I think it was an overwhelming majority was calling for impeachment, calling for his removal right away. And unfortunately, a lot of Americans have moved on, right? So some people say, you know what, he's out of office, mission accomplished. Well, it's not necessarily. So the reason why I still think it might happen, and I agree with Mr. Massey, I think that the margin is going to be much narrower than most people believe. To me, I think I'm going to lean more towards a conviction, but I think the margin is going to be very, very close.
Yeah, I think those are good points. I think that's a great question too, Ethan. I heard one of the commentators during the trial yesterday say it was remarkable because the judges who are going to vote for or against impeachment, they were the victims or the intended victims of this crime, which doesn't usually happen. Yeah, I agree. I think it would be closer than most think. But I sort of think that history is not going to be kind to those Republicans who know in their heart of hearts that what happened was bad for democracy, but will not vote to convict the former president because they're scared to lose their jobs.
It's pretty deep. Wow. Okay, now do you see a divided nation becoming more unified under the new administration, or still more divided?
I think now that we moved on to administration, I think that there is hope that we can start getting back to policies, get back to politics, get back to bringing people together. So I think is it a racial thing? Is it a gender thing? I think it's an American thing. And coming together doesn't happen overnight, but I think the healing process can begin. And I think it starts with almost a little bit of normalcy in our politics.
I think there is the opportunity for people to come back together, but I think honestly, one of the ways that might happen is if the government can go ahead and figure out how to handle the pandemic, because that is really a barrier to anybody figuring out a way to get back to business as usual. And until that problem is solved, it's going to be very, very difficult to worry about some of these other issues. So if the Biden administration and Congress can get us back on the right track when it comes to the pandemic and the economy and unemployment, then I think there's hope that we can start solving these bigger problems.
Okay, since we're on the topic of the Republican Party, as in a few questions before this, there seems to be a sort of struggle between those who want to stand by Trump and remain with him, or just distance from him as much as possible. Which way do you see that going?
Yeah, I think Republicans need to, some of them need to get back a little bit into reality and stop believing lies that have been spread. That could help the party.
I think you'll see maybe not an official split in the Republican Party, but I do think that you see some Republican leaders now who are not buying into what the rest of the party has believed for the last 4 years, like Representative Cheney and the senator from Nebraska, who, if they can step up as leaders in the party and maybe push the party back in a more moderate direction, then I think they can potentially avoid a split. But if nobody's willing to step up and everybody's going to act like they're afraid of losing their positions in Congress, then we won't see a change.
Yep. I mean, and to take off what Mr. Massey was saying, I see the Republican Party has a major decision here. You know, if they are to survive, I think they have to distance themselves from many of the policies that have been set forth. Now, does the Republican Party, are they able to kind of unify themselves, distance themselves, and create a new kind of party, you know, within the Republican Party that is more showing youth and not just a certain demographic in which the Republican Party has been so tied to? All right.
Okay, now, do you guys have any other thoughts that you would like to share with us before we head out?
Sure, I got one. If this shows anything for all of our students that are, many of them will be voting in the next election, I think what's been gone in the past few elections, if anything, has shown us that we as Americans need to do better. We need to be more informed. All the information is out at your fingertips. We need to do a better job as ourselves, as our civic responsibility and our duty to get out there, be informed, make better choices as to who are we putting up, how is this decision process being made. Become active citizens, because it's directly affecting you with college, with your jobs, with your families. We've seen this now, especially given a pandemic. How do we move forward from this and become better?
Okay, Mr. Massey, would you like to add to that?
I would. I think that's a great point, that we need to stay vigilant. We need to stay active. And just because the next presidential election is not for another 4 years, you know, doesn't mean that we take the next few years off and ignore what's going on, you know, in Washington or, you know, here in Massachusetts or even here locally in Salem. Take the time to educate yourself, to expose yourself to different perspectives and sources. And when you have the opportunity to do your civic responsibility, go out and vote in every election you possibly can do that. That's how you have your voice counted.
Yes, it matters.
Yeah, it certainly does. All right. Hey, thank you very much, Mr. Bob, Mr. Massey, and Mr. Montu for joining us today once again. And now let's head back to the studio.
Thank you, Ethan.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks. It's important that we have to understand why these events happen in the first place. Well, that's why we have history as a core academic subject. Well, that's all we have for you today, Salem High. This has been the Salem High News, brought to you by the students of digital media. Take care, stay safe, get educated, stay classy, and we will see you after break. We should do these discussions more often.